again, everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And I know most of you are probably way into the Fuentes Piers Morgan interview today. I will be getting that tomorrow. I had already set up for the very controversial college football playoff outcome that has a lot of people happy and a lot of people upset. Now, if you are a Notre Dame fan, which I am not, you probably feel screwed, and frankly, rightfully so. Notre Dame is probably, I would say, top 8 best team in the country. Yes, they lost those 2 games in the beginning of the season, September, but they lost those 2 games by combined 4 points. I mean, they didn't get run over. They did go on a 10-game winning streak after that, and I think the average margin of victory was like 30 points. I mean, they fucked everybody up. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Who do they play? I get it. But they played out their schedule. And they looked very, very impressive. And like I said, they have the second longest active winning streak in the country, second only to Indiana, who are the Big Ten champions and clearly the number 1 team in the country now. But it wasn't who didn't get in that is more controversial to me, or I shouldn't say controversial. I really want to say suspicious to me. It's who did get in. Alabama at 9-3, who were torched on Saturday night against Georgia. Torched, embarrassed. They get in. They get in. Now we have this. We have CBS Sports here. Brandon Marcello interviewing Hunter Yurachek. He's one of these. I guess he's the president or whatever it is of this committee that picks the teams. And the controversy here with me, with most of the country, is how did Miami get in? Well, that isn't really controversial to me. And he explains why. Miami gets in because of the head-to-head with Notre Dame, which does make sense. The ACC pushed this very, very hard. And I'll tell you why Alabama got in. And that's a little bit more sinister to me. But I would never have thought I'd see the day. And you listen, the world is changing. The world is changing rapidly. But I never thought I'd see the day when Notre Dame wouldn't get the benefit of the doubt or get the break. Notre Dame are the only American sports team, pro or collegiate, that has a national audience. The only one. They are a ratings juggernaut. People watch Notre Dame, and it doesn't matter who the fuck they play. They can play Appalachian State or USC. They get numbers in ratings. And for the networks not to step in and say, hey, listen, we got to broadcast these games. We want to see Notre Dame. Miami doesn't have the same following Notre Dame does. I mean, is there any doubt to that? I mean, does Alabama have the same national viewership that Notre Dame has? I don't think so. Back in the day, if you look at Notre Dame's 11 national championships, there are a few of those national championships that you can almost argue kind of went to Notre Dame because of their gold helmets, not because of their record. I think they had a couple of two lost seasons where they were national champions. I think the year Montana won it in 1977. I think Notre Dame had 2 losses. I think maybe 3. But it seems like those days are over. It seems like Notre Dame don't have that pull anymore. And I guess the networks were okay with it. Now we're going to play a little bit of this Yurachek video. discussion. This is for educational purposes only, so they don't knock me off. CBS Sports, please be nice. Here they are.
Going into this process, first off, Hunter, the big question, of course, why the decision after last week to move Miami over Notre Dame?
That really centered around what we did with BYU following the big championship game against Texas Tech. It's the second time they had played Texas Tech in the last 4 weeks. Same result. BYU looked the same. They were physically dominated on both sides of the ball, and we decided as a committee that Miami deserved to be ranked ahead of BYU. In doing so, then you moved Miami to 11.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is important.
I hate when these things happen.
Was Notre Dame at 10. And then you had that direct head-to-head comparison between those two teams. And as you look at the resumes of both Miami and Notre Dame, they're almost identical. Schedule strength, record strength, common opponents, results against common opponents, how they look statistically on the offense and defensive side of the ball. And then where you had to lean on, of course, is the head-to-head matchup between those two teams Labor Day weekend, with Miami being the winner of that. And that was the deciding factor in placing Miami over Notre Dame.
Going back to last week, why wasn't Miami over Notre Dame last week if obviously no results had really changed between the two?
Because we had felt as a committee that Notre Dame deserved to be ahead of BYU and BYU deserved to be ahead of Miami. Thus, Notre Dame deserved to be ahead of Miami because they were ahead of BYU. And there was not, we compared those two teams. Head to head is just one of the tools in our toolbox, one of the data points that we use. And because of BYU being sandwiched in between them, there was not enough to move Miami ahead of both BYU and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was wondering, every conference championship loser this past week ended up actually dropping in the rankings except for Alabama. So why did Alabama, after losing by 3 touchdowns and the rush offense being held to just 1 yard, get the benefit of the fact there of not being able to drop in the rankings while everybody else did?
That's a great question. And so Alabama was playing Georgia for the second time. Alabama had gone to Georgia earlier in the season, beaten Georgia at Georgia by 3 points, arguably the best win in college football this year. Ohio State lost a head-to-head matchup, the first one against Indiana, so it's naturally to drop them from 1 to 2. And then BYU, again, lost for a second time to Texas Tech in a very similar manner, where they did not look great on either side of the ball. Texas Tech really dominated them physically, dominated both of those games.
You know, as you know, I don't know if you know yet, but Notre Dame has decided to just completely opt out of the bowl season now. They've declined a bowl invitation as a result of missing out on the college football playoff. And their athletics director, Pete Vivacqua, actually even told Yahoo Sports, quote, "Any rankings or show prior to this last one is an absolute joke and a waste of time. Why put these young student athletes through these false emotions just to pull the rug out from underneath?"
He's got a point there. 2 weeks ago, you have Notre Dame 2 teams above Alabama. Miami. And now all of a sudden, for some inexplicable reason, they get leapfrogged. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But this is, of course, the corporate answer. This is a well-rehearsed, well-written, well-briefed communications department answer. This wasn't by him, of course. And listen, Notre Dame have a beef. But the problem with Notre Dame is that they're an independent school and they don't have a conference to back them up. Notre Dame will always be independent because they make too much money on their own. So this is what they're going to have to deal with in the future, it seems.
Them, having not played a game in 2 weeks, and then a group of people in a room shatter their dreams without explanation. We feel like the playoff was stolen from our student athletes. With so much noise coming out of South Bend, and obviously something we've never seen before with a team missing the playoff and opting to not even play in the postseason, what's your reaction to the athletics director and, for that matter, the entire university there in their decision?
I think for the reason that Pete outlined there, and I have a lot of respect for Pete, and he's a wonderful athletic director, is why we stayed up as a committee into the early morning hours, almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and came back at sunrise and continued to debate Alabama versus Miami versus Notre Dame. What we knew as a committee, based on how the championship games played out, that we had three deserving teams, but only 2 spots for those three deserving teams. Someone was going to feel just like Notre Dame felt as the results came out, whether that be Notre Dame, Miami, or Alabama. And unfortunately, it was Notre Dame. And I feel for those young men on that campus, but I was going to feel for young men, and as was our.
Sure, you did. There is no reason Alabama should be in this playoff. That's my opinion. No reason whatsoever. But the reason why Alabama are in are for 2 reasons. First, they're in a very powerful conference, the SEC. And second, the SEC has a major contract with ESPN. ESPN, if you noticed all last week, were lobbying Alabama. It's all network. Conferences put pressure on these networks to showcase their teams. They want the playoff to be a showcase for the SEC and for the Big Ten. Now, the Big Ten has a reason to, because they have the 2 best teams in the country. We could possibly see, as I said last week, this might have been part 1 of Indiana, Ohio State. But the SEC is an immensely powerful conference. And I'm speculating here. I'm speculating that they put enormous pressure on these networks to get them into this playoff. It's Alabama. And how they came about, you would think that Alabama and Notre Dame would have gotten in, and Miami would have been the ones out. But the ACC probably did the same thing. They might have a guy from the ACC on this committee who pulled hard for Miami. I don't know. I wasn't in that room, and neither were you. But it's very, very suspicious that a team like. And I'm not talking about Miami here, because like what this guy said is true. Hey, the head-to-head matchup, they beat them. But Alabama is the problem. Alabama has no right to be in this game. They have more losses than Notre Dame. They were embarrassed in front of most of the country in that championship game. They looked putrid. They have no business being in the playoff. But they have the powerful backing of a conference, and Notre Dame doesn't. And Notre Dame can no longer rely on its name now. So we will get no Notre Dame. I can't imagine if this is how many times this has happened where Notre Dame doesn't have any type of bowl game or any type of January game. I mean, it seems like they've lived in the bowl games there since I've been alive. But this is unprecedented, I think. And this is a mess. The SEC is a mess. I'm sorry, the NCAA is a mess. They've created a monster here. Now, the thing with the problem is that this monster is making them a tremendous amount of money, so they don't give a shit. They love the controversy, they love the publicity, and they love the fact that people are going nuts over this stuff because that shows people care. And if people care, people spend. And that's what's happening here. Notre Dame got screwed in the long run. Bottom line. They've opted out not to play in a bowl game. They're not going to play in some Chick-fil-A bowl or whatever the fuck these rinky-dink bowls are called now. The bowls are dead. Nobody pays attention to them anymore. So nobody's going to care. And Notre Dame, just like big teams in college basketball don't go to the NIT anymore, Notre Dame has said, you know what? We'll see you next year. And that's their prerogative. They have all the right in the world to do that. And anybody who criticizes them can criticize them, but they're showing that they have standards, and I agree with their standards. If we can't play in the playoff, we're not playing at all. And sayonara. But to think that Notre Dame, one of the top, they're not a borderline top 10 team. I would say they were 8 or 9 at worst. For them to be leapfrogged by not one but 2 teams is just ridiculous. And there's something fishy going on here. And I think the conferences have a lot to do with it. I think they put pressures on the networks, which is shocking to me because Notre Dame is a network darling. And Notre Dame got flamed out. And they now listen, what this is going to do now is this is going to force teams to look at what happened to Notre Dame and say, you know what? We're going to put a bunch of cupcakes in September, and we're going to crush these little schools. And then once our teams are revved up and ready to go, that's when we'll play our normal schedule. You won't see any more Texas A&M Notre Dame or Miami Notre Dame in September anymore. Those days are probably going to be gone because these college teams love to make their own schedules. They're out of conference schedules. And Notre Dame doesn't have a conference, so they can do whatever they want. And I think that's what they're going to do next year. They're going to put a bunch of cupcakes in September, and then they're going to roll everybody, and then they're going to play their normal rivalry games like Stanford and USC and yada, yada, yada. But Notre Dame are pissed. They have a right to be. They should be in the playoff. The playoff would be better with Notre Dame in it. Would Notre Dame have won? No. I mean, they were in the weren't they in the championship game last year? Or in the semifinal, at least? I mean, this is just very bad. It's a very bad look for the NCAA. And, I mean, it's going to be a great playoff anyway. You have some great matchups here. But Alabama, no way they deserve to be in there. That Notre Dame got hosed. And that's my 2 cents. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, my friends, Satan is always busy. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And just remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. We'll see you later.